We are continuing to follow the very latest on Nicolás Maduro, whose first court hearing just wrapped within the past 20 minutes. Here's what we know happened inside of that courtroom. The Venezuelan president and his wife both pleading not guilty. Maduro saying he is innocent, a decent man, and the president of his country. He appeared in prison garb, dressed in a blue jumpsuit. He was forced to listen to the judge via a headset that translated to Spanish. Both he and his wife did that. He told the judge he was unaware of his rights as a defendant in the U.S. and said the judge is the first person who told him those rights since his arrest. The hearing then wrapped with the judge setting the next hearing for March 17th. That all coming ahead of congressional leaders and members of key House and Senate committees who will learn classified details about the operation to capture Maduro and bring him to the U.S. to face those narco-terrorism charges. NewsNation's Joe Khalil is live for us on Capitol Hill. Joe, how is this all playing as Congress is now returning to Washington?
A lot of anticipation, Nicole, and obviously the main event tonight is that briefing at 5:30 that you mentioned, a really stacked congressional meeting along with the cabinet members. You've got secretaries, Marco Rubio, Pete Hegseth, people who are right at the heart of the operation in Venezuela, Dan Kane, the nation's top general, the CIA director, and the attorney general, all meeting with congressional leaders of the top committees that are relevant to what's going on in Venezuela. So think the Armed Services Committee leaders from both parties, Foreign Relations, Foreign Affairs, and then you've got the Intelligence Committee leaders, along with the party leaders writ large. So the Speaker of the House, Leader John Thune, and then also Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer on the Democratic side. And this is an incredibly important meeting here. It's a really important part of the discussion. Remember, when critics of President Trump say that he's acting illegally here, part of the reason they're saying that is because they say acts of war must go through Congress first. Clearly, that didn't happen here. Congress was not briefed ahead of time before this strike and the operation that took Maduro out of the country of Venezuela. You've heard people who were in the administration, people like Marco Rubio, say that, in fact, this was not an act of war or an invasion, but rather this was a law enforcement operation. So there are plenty of questions moving forward here from lawmakers about what comes next, what happened, what authority does the administration have, and what role is Congress going to play moving forward. What I've heard from mostly Democrats today is a frustration that even when they do get these briefings, to put it bluntly, Democrats feel they were lied to. The last time these very same players, Rubio, Hegseth, and others, were on Capitol Hill briefing lawmakers, lawmakers came out of those briefings with the impression that this operation was not about regime change, and they feel very differently today. They feel like they were misled. One of the people who's going to be in that meeting, Senator Mark Warner, the top Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee, and he's wondering what the protocol is moving forward. Is this a one-time thing that happened with Venezuela and Maduro, or is this a new Trump doctrine that's going to be applied to several other foreign countries with further foreign intervention? This is what he told our team today.
The basis of this operation that says, well, ruler here has broken American law, so we have a right to go in and take them out. Well, under that theory, nothing should stop then Putin from going after Zelensky, from China going after Taiwan, which is the Chinese government's claimed for 40 years is a rogue province, or any large country from going after a neighboring smaller country's leader just because they don't like him.
Now, we did reach out to Warner's Republican counterpart, Senator Tom Cotton, chairman of the Intelligence Committee. He said this today on social media. The president has inherent authority under our Constitution to protect American national interests and ensure indicted drug traffickers face justice. He said that, I'm glad President Trump took decisive action, necessary action against the illegitimate Maduro regime. He went on to say that the future of Venezuela should be in the hands of its citizens. So obviously very different takes based on what side of the aisle that you're on today, Nicole.
Absolutely right. Joe Khalil live for us there in D.C. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.